And welcome to another virtual Black Hat event at Security Weekly here. Today we have a special guest, Mauricio Velazco, and we're going to talk about some awesome new tool that he's developed called PurpleSharp. And with that, Mauricio, it is great to have you on the show, and super excited to kind of get talking about your new tool and some of the developments that you've been doing. And this tool is actually released at the Black Hat Arsenal. That's going to be pretty fun time here at the segment.
Hey, thanks. Really happy to be here, Tyler. And yeah, I've been following your work and the team's work. So yeah, really happy and honored to be here and looking forward to entertaining conversation about topics that I know we both are passionate about. So yeah, really happy.
No, yeah, this is super exciting. The level of effort that you've kind of put into this tool. I know there are many shops currently working on this or have been working on this for the better part of 4 or 5 years, and likewise, very honored to be on the show with you and to kind of talk through some of your work and how you've gotten to the point where you've got a very mature tool, in my opinion, that does a substantial amount with very little overhead and setup. So do you want to kind of give us just a short TLDR of what your talk was about, what the tool was about that you released at Black Hat Arsenal this year, and kind of what the goal is for what the tool is going to do as we move forward?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for the kind words. So let's start with some background. So before I jumped at my current role as a threat researcher, I used to run a blue team, and I used to be part of a blue team for 8 years. So I went through a lot of challenges of, deploying prevention tools to deploying a SIEM and detection. So one of the challenges that I had specifically with the with the challenge or responsibility of detection engineering was, a way to have to build detections and test detections consistently. Okay. And I realized that we as detection engineers, we really needed to have the capability to generate attack telemetry on demand and not necessarily wait for a red team or wait for a purple team where, we cannot do this all the time. Like us internally as defenders, test our detections, build our detections with that telemetry, because if we don't have, we can have a really good environment instrumented to get logging from applications, endpoints, networks, and into your SIEM or data lake, whatever, right? Once you have the data, which is a great first step, I think the next step is to understand attack behaviors. And once you have this attack behavior, attack telemetry in your log, in your query language, then you can identify the patterns to detect it, right? So that's why I wanted to build a tool that will allow my team to simulate attacks without having to go through the hurdles of, hey, let's get an implant, let's get a command and control, let's get a reverse shell. 2 hours later, okay, now we're ready to run simulations. No, I wanted hey, on the tip of your fingers, just run this command and you're going to get a simulation that's going to allow you to validate your detection, right?
And at a high level, up until this point, right? Like from the standpoint of most enterprise networks and even small to medium business, up until now, you would typically have to either wait for another pen test and hope that pen test provided or red team provided good IOCs, provided good access and good telemetry data, or you would hope that they would provide you some replication or maybe with inside the report, the ability to do validation so you can do retesting. But that's not always the case. And up till now, like you said, this is a real big problem. This is something that pen tests have kind of gotten a bad name from just due to the fact that replicating some of these tests are very difficult from an internal team if you don't have that level of technical prowess, right?
Agree, 100% agree. And I think that's how the evolution of this type of exercises has landed where we are now, which now you have the concept of purple team exercises, right? And I think PurpleSharp is really a purple team exercise tool, if you think about it. If you consider a purple team as this engagement where, a group of people that have the offensive skill set and know how to generate attacks or execute attacks, and you have this other group of people that understand an environment, the logging, the telemetry that is being ingested, and then they work together to say hey, let's simulate this. Can we see it? Can we detect it? Can we enhance our detection? So this concept of purple team is something that I've I've been into for the past 4 years, 5 years. Initially as a customer, because we would hire red teams and pen tests and then do a purple team exercise at the end, right? But like you said, that's not enough, because you can only hire them once a year, twice a year. Okay, if you're lucky, 4 or 6 times, but that's still not enough, because if your detection stops working 1 day or 1 hour, that may be the difference between you detecting an attack or being on the front page of the New York Times a few months later, right? So we
Not
need
to mention the new attacks that come out, right?
exactly. So in my mind, detection team need this capability to continuously test their detection controls and make sure, like, hey, and this is what I love about like end-to-end adversary simulation, because it allows me to kind of going with what you were saying with the TLDR is, once you execute an end-to-end simulation, you can confirm a few things. One, if the telemetry is being generated locally, right? Meaning, like, is that event log being created or not? Do you have issues with your configuration? Is your EDR even installed, right? Two, if the event pipeline is working, like, you may have that event locally, but you don't have it centrally on your SIEM, on your whatever analytics engine that you use. It's not, it's useless, right? So, and there's a lot of complexity with that event pipeline. Are you using Windows Event Forwarding? Are you using just traffic, syslog? So many things could go wrong. If you test end to end, you're also testing event pipeline. That's number two. Number three, you're testing the logic of the analytic. Like, maybe your logic is not resilient enough. Maybe it's not going to detect variations, right? So that's where you test. And finally, the fourth step is you're also testing your response process. Like, me as a defender, if I know that someone is reading LSAS, like a suspicious process is trying to get a handle onto LSAS, I want to know about it, and I want my team, my SOC, to escalate that to a criticality where someone else, we're going to look at it and understand, okay, what happened here? Who's trying to read else, right? But, if you're not continually testing or like train like you fight, right? You don't know if your SOC is going to follow the SOP or the playbooks, right? So with one simulation, you get these 4 confirmations on your detection program, which, for me, it's just so important.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And there's a couple key points there that you pointed out, like the fact that you've got this all within inside of one binary, with the concept of kind of the scout, the simulator, the ability to do variations, to add in separate credentials and child process spawning. Like, you've taken not just the purple team concept, but you've leveraged all of the different variations on an attack, all of the things from the very beginning, and being able to detect basic level attacks, have a variation on that. Are you seeing the log? Are you following that attack chain? All the way up to where you're using kind of some stealthy and honestly customizable attacks they're very simple to outline with inside of the tool and build different playbooks for. So can you talk a little bit about some of those the variations, the Win32 APIs that you're using for some of the more advanced pieces, and then the concept of how playbooks kind of fall into this, and the ability to expand those and develop those as a community and as an individual?
Yeah, by the way, thanks a lot. It's really interesting to hear all these concepts from my tool, coming from you, and you appreciate them. So that's awesome. And that's one of the things that motivates me particularly. But anyway, so I think that specifically for the variations, I think that's kind of like the next level of purple teaming. Like, once we understand that we need to execute techniques and validate them against detection controls, now the next question comes to like, okay, but are we simulating all the variations that will try to bypass this detection that we have? And the way I kind of found myself into this was doing purple team exercises with external vendors. And I think a company that you were part of at some point, where we were doing a password spraying attack, and say like, hey, but what happens if, okay, you're doing a password spraying attack against the domain controller with some users using like a partial tool. That's one, we detected. We have this event code. Okay, great, move on. But then we say like, wait, instead of moving on to the next technique, what happens if you, for example, instead of doing that, you spray, let's say you're spraying 100 accounts, you spray them against one remote host, one authentication at a time. So kind of like distributed. how does that look like on the logs? Does my detection stand and that can detect this, or is it completely bypassable by this, right? So that's why we started thinking, okay, but what if you use RDP instead of SMB to password spray? Is it different? What if you use curve rows versus NTLM to execute your password spray? Does it look different? So we started enumerating and kind of bringing down all these these examples and variations, and that's what I'm doing with PurpleSharp. Really, execute the same technique as many ways as possible to confirm that detection resilience. Because otherwise, we may be blind to certain attacks. We may be, just assume that, hey, we have a detection for this technique, we're good. Next. And then on the next red team, we see someone executing that same technique and we completely missed it, right? That's why I think we need to iterate on techniques, and that's what PurpleSharp does. So, for example, if you think about lateral movement, you can move laterally with Windows native commands like sc.exe to create a remote service, or you can use a Windows API call, create service to interact with that service control manager remotely and create a service. Or you can do a little bit more stealthy, and instead of creating a service, just picking a service, modifying its configuration, starting it so you get code execution, and then moving it back to its previous binary path. So you bypass that service creation event detection, right? So that's, for example, the three ways that PurpleSharp supports to execute this technique of lateral movement using services. Three different ways, right? On the first one, if you have an EDR, you can detect. On the second one, EDR will not see anything. But if you have Windows events, it will detect. On the third one, EDR will not work. The service creation event will not work. So you need to go back to EDR and look at parent and child process relationship, where you're looking for suspicious processes coming out of like services.exe as a parent, because that's what PSXEC and these tools do, right? When you create a service, the parent is always services.exe. So think about that one technique, three different ways of executing it, three different ways of detecting it. And that gives us that detection resilience for that one technique that it has been heavily used, as you know, by red teamers, pen testers, threat actors, ransomware groups. So everyone's using this, right? So why not just dive deep and make sure that we can detect it in a resilient way?
That's amazing.
And then the next,
that's a pretty disruptive technology, to be fair. That I would say that eliminates a good portion of kind of pen test puppy mill companies, and honestly, companies could save money. This is from a return on investment standpoint, this tool should be ran, and you should be running through and detecting all of the different methods and coming up with playbooks prior to a red team. I think this just enhances the red team. So, a lot of us stop getting bored with the interesting or the stuff we have to do every single time on every single network. Like, let's get past all that. Let's get through all these playbooks and let's find really, really interesting stuff that, maybe a supply chain attack is going to utilize, so we can focus on the bigger things and getting the fundamentals right. This just is like a 10x exponential value add from a company standpoint. And the fact, like, you just released this tool free, like, this is something that companies could save $50,000 to $100,000 covering a very comprehensive pen test that they may get from a lot of other places, honestly.
Oh, yeah, that means a lot. Wow. Yeah, I mean, absolutely with you. Like, the PurpleSharp is in no way or shape or form replacement for a type of exercise like a red team or a pen test, right? But it can help do the boring, like the not boring, but like the static, discrete things that every pen test needs to do or a pen tester needs to do, so they can focus on the more interesting things, right? So yeah, absolutely. Like, if you want your customer to answer the question, can you detect me moving laterally using WMI? You could, as a pen tester, get a shell back, set up your command and control, bypass proxies, and then 2 hours later, test this WMI, or just download PurpleSharp, use that JSON playbook, which, by the way, that was your second question. And let me tackle that. So PurpleSharp supports the concept of JSON playbooks that describe a simulation. And each simulation has a lot of features, right? Like, is the service creation event? Okay, what's the remote target that you're gonna create the service against? What's the service name? What's the service path? Which, how long am I gonna take? Is there a sleep time between each authentication event for a curve roasting attack, for example? Like, do you want PurpleSharp to wait between each ticket, service ticket, request? anyway, like so many variations, right? So it's really flexible in that way. So going back to the example of, instead of spending 2 hours setting up your C2 and getting a shell back and testing that for a customer, why not just like run this with this JSON playbook that, by the way, I already have playbooks already ready to use in a project, another project that I have that I'm calling Purple AD, or the Active Directory Purple Team Playbook, which is JSON playbooks that can be already to be used. You just download the binary, download the playbook, modify certain things, you run it. So now this WMI lateral movement simulation takes you 5 minutes. You get those logs to your customer, and then you use that hour and 55 minutes to look at those Jenkins servers that look weird and maybe they have a vulnerability, and you find another attack path, another attack vector for your customer, right? So absolutely, I think, again, no way that PurpleSharp is ever going to be a replacement for a type of assessment, but it can help and allow you to automate certain things as a tester that provide value to your customer, and at the same time allow you to have more time to find the things that will provide maybe more value to your customer if you have the time to research and look at the environment, right?
Yeah, I think there's some huge value here from, I would say, not even just a adversary simulation, but from a configuration management.
Yeah.
What kind of things happen when you add a GPO? Do you have unit testing available that validates that you didn't just open up lateral movement by deploying a GPO? This provides a very easy, flexible way that, one, ensures that you're still getting the logs you expect to get in a very structured kind of unit test manner that is also flexible and customizable. But two, you're able to deploy this very, very quickly without having to stand up a whole bunch of infrastructure, validate your configuration that you've just deployed, and then move on to making sure that that validation didn't change anything from a logging and visibility standpoint. Those are things that are hard to tackle. And honestly, there's $1 million companies out there trying to solve this very problem and not doing it as well as you've done in a single C# binary, which is hilarious.
Yeah, like the challenge of a detection engineering program is like a beast really of different moving parts and tools and networks, and so many things can go wrong and that are going to break, and they're going to make you blind to the attacks that you thought you were capturing a day before. Day later, someone changed something, a GPO change, a firewall rule, an upgrade, hot fix. So many changes going on in the environments, right? Especially now with DevOps, right? Like, you don't even get a change control meeting. It's just changes are happening. How do you know if your EDRs are installed everywhere? How do you know if those events are coming in? How do you know if that detection for your WMI lateral movement is still working? I mean, honestly, I think that there's different ways, but one of the ways is just continuous adversary simulation, right? And that's, it could be targeted, centralized, it could be random, depending on your risk appetite. But really, that's the only way of knowing if things are working. And you cannot wait for a pen test once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year to be able to answer that question. I think you need to answer that question every day, every hour. So yeah, that's the whole idea of the tool, and I'm happy that you get the idea and the benefits.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I said, this is definitely a pet project that's been in the works for me for at least 6 years. So seeing you automate this the way that you've done it, and then the Purple AD, the JSON playbooks, like this is a great opportunity for the community if you're interested in doing purple teaming, if you're looking at adversary simulation, being able to do unit and validation tests, and you build some of these playbooks, definitely contribute back. Like this, I think this could actually be very, very big, as big as MITRE. You have all the techniques within inside of there. I think you have 47 different techniques now listed, yep. But being able to correlate those with MITRE, build out this framework, build out some of these JSON playbooks, this could be a very large tool, and hope you're ready for some of the work you get cut out for you now. But what do you see for kind of the future of the tool, and where you really want it to go from a next iteration standpoint?
Yeah, so tackling on the playbooks, yeah, definitely. I would love for this to become kind of what the name of this project is, right? Like the Active Directory Purple Team Playbook. So a resource for people that are trying to confirm their detection posture, like blue teams, detection teams that are trying to confirm their detection posture. I think, guys out there, that testing techniques against you is a great way of confirming your detection posture. So my goal is to provide to you a list of ready-to-use playbooks that you can just download, customize, and run. Like in that, you get that return of investing of knowing if your login is working, if your detection is working, right? Now, to tackle the second question of the future, I think definitely supporting more techniques. That's always a key, one important feature request for me. Diving into more, because I come from an organization that was heavily using Active Directory, and I know that Active Directory is an important technology used by a lot of companies, even though that cloud and Azure Active Directory and other type of identity providers, cloud providers are around and probably will get even more traction. I think Active Directory is still going to be there. So one of my goals is to continue to add techniques around Active Directory and add more kind of like native support for Active Directory. So for example, I support Kerberos, but for example, ASP roasting, I don't support right now. So things like that. Things like, the latest coercive authentication, that could be interesting. So that's around one, techniques. Two, documentation is a big, now that I have this open source project, I realize, that's the responsibility, because I need a person who wants to learn more about PurpleSharp to really easily use it. So documentation is a big thing that I need to work on. And I was focusing on the code, but now I want to focus on documentation for a few weeks, a few months, so I can have like a better introduction of what it is, how it works, how can you use it. That's one. So I think those are my two main ones, for now. I don't want to get into cloud, and I want to focus on Windows, and Active Directory, and then the techniques. There's some support for, at some point I wanted to be able to read atomic red team YAML files and make PurpleSharp like an execution engine of atomic red team. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And this is probably what question that you would have is like, how can someone build their own module for simulation? And unfortunately, you cannot. It's not like Red Team now, the atomic red team, that you could create your own. Because it's a C# tool and how I wrote it, like you would have to write your own C#, class and methods. So it's not as flexible in that. But the playbooks do give me that in a way, right? Because I can provide just the abstraction of the techniques and the parameters, and then people can come and help with the playbooks themselves. So that's one way of, I definitely want people to contribute, right? Code, playbooks, whatever it is, even just feedback. Like I've been on phone calls with people in Nigeria at like 1 a.m. I was just helping them, like, hey, this doesn't work. Okay, let's work out. Like, I love the feedback. So I think that's one of my goals, just get feedback and hopefully, get people to use it and provide feedback. That's a big one for me.
Excellent. Oh, that's fantastic. I definitely will be using it and contributing and keep helping you out. If there's any of our listeners or interns out there that are looking to get involved in any security project, documentation is really, really difficult for those of us who like to write code and or just do a lot of the testing, and we really suck at documentation. So, feel free to reach out to some of these projects, not even just this one, and offer that contribution to help understand a tool, write some documentations, provide some useful, meaningful things to get involved in the community. There's a lot of people that would love that help. So with that, we have one more interview coming up, and I just want to take a minute and thank you, Mauricio. This is fantastic. Tool's fantastic. Appreciate what you're providing for the community and really stepping up for what you've done with PurpleSharp. And we will continue to look forward to the next iterations and the new stuff that we can do with it.
Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation. And yeah, for the people that found this interesting, you can go to my GitHub and PurpleSharp, and you'll Google it. I think it's the first result. And there, I have some demos. The Black Hat video is going to come out soon on my Twitter, so follow me on Twitter and there. Check out that GitHub for I have the demos of other talks, some documentation, PurpleSharp.com. Check it out, and if you like it, if you have any ideas, ping me. I always love hearing new ideas and feature requests. I've implemented a lot of features from just random tweets that just were great ideas. So I appreciate those great ideas. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tyler, and the whole Security Weekly team. Happy to be here. And bye-bye.